Hello, good morning. Actually, good afternoon to everybody. Depends where you are. And thanks a lot to join us. You're here for our bi-weekly webinar session. Let's give a moment. People are joining. Yeah, thanks a lot. Again, welcome to everybody that are joining today. We are here for a new exciting webinar together with Jason from the GEF. We're going to speak about nature-based solutions. Let's give another minute for the people to join the session. Thanks a lot to be there. While we wait, you can interact with us with a question and answer with the chat. Yeah, and you can also raise your hands. The webinar will consist in a presentation for the first half, and then we will hope to have an exciting and interactive debate for the second half. So you can raise your hand, you can write your question, and we will take care to read your question. You can take the microphone to ask question at the end of the presentation. So the webinar is gonna start in 1 minute. Thanks a lot. Okay, so for the sake of time, I would suggest we start. Again, thanks to everyone to join us. You are here at our bi-weekly meeting. Yeah, this is the webinar series from the Green Inclusive and Climate Smart Finance Action Group webinars, yeah, hosted by the European Microfinance Platform. Today, we have the great chance to have with us Jason Spensley. You see together with me in the video. And is going to tell us about financing climate change adaptation and nature-based solution, about the opportunities and the learning from the Global Environmental Facility. If you don't know about this topic, it's one of the first time, actually the second or the third time we touch it for the climate change adaptation and specifically for nature-based solution. I think it's the first time we touch it, but it is such a key importance that I'm so happy to start having this stream together with such a renewed entity and person as Jason and the GEF, and you will get to know what nature-based solutions are, what has been doing into that, and what are the opportunity, and in particular, what could be the role of the green inclusive finance to promote them. Well, for the last people that just joined, I would like to remind again, we're gonna have a presentation that is gonna last for 30-35 minutes in total with my introduction. And then we're gonna have between 20 and 25 minutes of question and answer. If you want to ask question while you heard us, while you listen to us, please write in the question and answer here in the function in Zoom or in the chat. If you want to take your microphone, yeah, we will give voice to anyone that want to speak at the end of the presentation. So please, by the end of the presentation, raise your hands and we can open your microphone. Voila, so let's start. So let me, first of all, before giving the word to Jason, let me spend a couple of words about the Green Inclusive Finance and Green Inclusive and Climate Smart Finance Action Group of the European Microfinance Platform. I think many of you knows us, but some do not know us. So let me give a quick presentation. So the GICSF, so Green, Inclusive and Climate Smart Finance Action Group, is a unique multi-stakeholder think tank. So we have composed by private and public investors, by consulting, by IT provider, by academics, by network of microfinance institution, by financial institution, etc. So it's very diversified. That I think what makes us unique. The other thing that makes us unique is also that has been launched since a while. So we have been launched in 2013, yeah, and we are constantly growing in terms of interest and activities. Our objective is to discuss current challenges strategy in green inclusive finance, improve the knowledge and action about the topic, enhance cooperation. That's the key role that we want to play. So put all the sector together and speak about what has been done and how can be done better, how can we scale it. That I think is quite important. So how do we align what we would like to do in green inclusive finance and how do we measure it? Publicize and disseminate the fundings, and announce, of course, the interest and concrete commitment. So these are some of the achievements we have been reached so far. So the group has been started in 2009, 2013, 2019. So one of the main achievements has been the development of what is called the Green Index, that as some of you have been involved also in the new review of the new Green Index. So this has been started some time ago and has put basically the standards of what we mean by environmental performance for the inclusive finance sector. I will state a couple of words later on. We develop a catalog of green inclusive energy products that is available on our website. We organize events, we participate in scientific committees, we organize trainings for FSPs or for investors here in Europe or outside Europe. And we foster and publication and e-learning. 2020 was a quite change time for us. We have been really fostering our activities, strengthening the group. And as you see here, we already had quite some achievement. So we've been working on what green inclusive finance means for many stakeholders. So engaging up to 250 stakeholders from investor, financial institution, consultant, etc., to understand what are the needs and the requirement when you try to assess the environmental performance of a financial institution. We've been analyzing more than 1,000 environmental assessments done in the last 8 to 10 years to understand where the sector stands. We have been mapping basically what we used to measure in terms of inclusive finance in the field with what is happening at the regulation level with the new regulation coming in and the new standards. We've been launching the webinar series where you are here that before was not existing. We have been launching the Develop of the Green 3.0, where some of you is part or will be part in the second round of feedback. We have developed an online library that will be released in the next weeks. And we've established a newsletter that we will receive soon, as well as the map of what our members are doing. Together with the SPTF and series, we have been launching a very, very interesting work that is basically to define the universal standard for environmental performance as a sub-part of universal standard for social performance that are managed by the SPTF, the Social Performance Task Force, and also this will be released this year. Voila, that's to give you some view of the traction. Yeah, so the group has been growth of more than 50% in the last period. In the last year, we've been running various webinars with quite some success. Yeah, and we have more than 250 subscribers to our newsletter and growing. This is an interesting event we'll be running with the FinDev at the beginning of the year, where we had quite some success in terms of audience as well. We try really to work as a group where we speak together with any kind of interested partner. Ongoing activity we are running now, just for you to know, we are finalizing and delivering the Green Index 3.0 that will be available normally after summer. We are finalizing the universal standard, universal performance with the joint work with the SPTF and the series as well will be released together with the Green Index. We are preparing training and organizing training so that everyone, being investor, being financial institution, will be trained on this new tool. We are preparing a study that is called the State of the Art of Green Inclusive Finance, where we will describe what we have found in the green inclusive finance in the last 8 years. We are working on regulation and green inclusive finance, digital solution and green inclusive finance, and a specific target on green inclusive finance in Europe in collaboration with our colleague from the European Microfinance Network. Another interesting, exciting thing we're working to engage more and more FSPs, so financial service provider directly, that can teach us how they develop green products. So we can define guidelines through the heroes, the one that already started doing that. We have webinar, newsletter, etc. Coming soon, you will have a new website. Yeah, please stay tuned. Our website is a bit old. You cannot find many information we are speaking about. It's quite some months that we are trying to update it. It will be updated soon. And so all these things will be available and public to everyone. And we're going to release by the end of June the online library. That is a unique tool where we are basically collecting all the literature we know, being grey literature, academic literature on the topic, so that you can look into that and you can also contribute. Yeah, you will get to know that more. Voila, 2 words about the Green Index. So the Green Index started 2014, evolved in 2016, and now we are finalizing 2021. These, I think, one of the key things that basically make the links to the speech, to the presentation of today, is that what is very new about the Green Index 3.0. So the Green Index 3.0 aim to assess the environmental performance of a microfinance institution or a financial institution that provides services to micro, small, and medium enterprises. And what is very new in 2021 is that it includes the topic of climate vulnerability. That was not really present prominently in the previous version. The previous version were more on the focus, do not harm the environment. Here, uniquely, we merge together two stream of line. One, do not harm the environment. Second, protect your assets, so your client, against environmental degradation and climate change. So this is one of the new prominent dimensions that I think Jason is going to tell us much more, because it's going to speak about climate change adaptation. So I really think it's timely to listen to what Jason is going to tell us about. Voila. So please stay tuned. We are preparing the second feedback round. Last point from my side. The Green Index has been developed in a collaborative way since the last 8 months. We've been already run through a first feedback round that involved more than 50 reviewers. We have been updating that according to your feedback. Actually, the first design has been designed through market consultation with more than 250 participants. Then we have the first review. Now we're having the second review. The second review will be public. So you will have the chance to provide comments, every one of you, and the institution that you work with, so that we can engage your feedback before delivering that. Voila, last word from my side, webinar series. You know, we have a webinar series every 2 weeks. We have 2 formats, one as today, around 45 minutes, 1 hour, and one much shorter that we did not start yet. We will start soon. Much shorter, 15 minutes for everyone that want to share news. Yeah, everyone has 15 minutes to listen to interesting things. So if everyone here is interested to share information with us and want to present, we will leave you the contact email, voila, so that you can contact us and we can put you on the waiting list, to provide your presentation. In 2024, the 24th of June, we will normally in this week release the online library, and we'll have a dedicated event, and we'll invite you all. This is just a participation on the webinar. You're making the success of this, so thanks to be there. Since the last 6 months, we had around 14 webinars, and we gather around 200 participants on average per month, yeah, for 2 times per month. So this success is thanks to you. We had more than 1,200 participants in the last 6 months. So this is, I think, what's really show the high interest and the diversified interest in green inclusive finance. Without too much hesitation, I leave the word to Jason Spensley, Senior Climate Change expert in the greening, the Global Environmental Facility, and is going to tell us about climate change adaptation and nature-based solution. Jason, the word is yours.
Merci bien, Davide. Bon après-midi, bonjour, buenas tardes, buenos días. It's really a pleasure to join you today. Thank you for the invitation. The future, including the future of global finance and business, directly depends on our relationship with nature. This is a scientific fact that we ignore, and we often ignore at our peril. It's also an opportunity for forward-thinking investors and solution providers. And at the Global Environment Facility, housed in the World Bank Group, we view green inclusive finance as a key opportunity, a key strategy for greening our financial sector and providing opportunities to address climate change, to adapt to climate change, and to address the biodiversity crisis. Next slide, please, Davide. I'd like to speak to you about three things. First, I'd like to provide a quick snapshot of what the Global Environment Facility is and its role in the global climate finance architecture, why it's relevant to inclusive finance. And then I'd like to speak about some substance of nature-based solutions, some of the scientific facts, economic facts. And third, round out with opportunities and some specific examples involving Jeff support. I think I'll speak for about 25 minutes, I believe. But first, just why this is important. And I think we all understand this, but let's get our frame in the right place. For the first time in history, the World Economic Forum, through its annual Global Risks Outlook, has declared and sent a strong warning that the 5 greatest risks to the world today, to the global economy, are directly related to nature and to climate change. Climate action failure, infectious diseases, biodiversity loss, human environmental change, and extreme weather. These are the greatest risks to our economies, to our health, to our well-being as a society. Next slide, please. And we view that inclusive finance is one of the, and I would argue one of the key opportunities for addressing both the climate and the biodiversity crisis. From the perspective of the Global Environment Facility, this is an opportunity to catalyze private capital for climate and biodiversity action, and we contribute to this as best we can, facilitating investment. And I'll really be stressing that nature is central to green inclusive finance. From our perspective, it's nature is the dark green of green, if you will. And we're excited that we're seeing a growing movement in green inclusive finance with microfinance institutions and other partners for green inclusive finance directly addressing climate adaptation, resilience, and biodiversity action. I came into this a number of years ago as starting, you might have heard of the project MIBA, Microfinance for Ecosystem-Based Adaptation, started in Latin America together with UNEP, United Nations Environment Program. And we're very excited about the work of the Green Inclusive and Climate Smart Finance Action Group, building this movement globally. Next slide, please. So quick snapshot of the GEF. What is it? Very quickly, just 4 quick slides. The Global Environment Facility is a multilateral set of funds that were established by the Rio Summit, global, focused on action in developing and emerging economies. We serve as the financial mechanism for 5 global conventions that you've probably heard of. Apologies if this is very known to some of you. The United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the Climate Change Convention, the UN Convention on Biological Diversity, the UN Convention to Combat Desertification, Minamata Convention on Mercury, and the Stockholm Convention on Persistent Organic Pollutants. So we serve as the mechanism to support developing and emerging economies to take action on these commitments through these global conventions. The GEF, for its acronyms, has existed for almost 30 years now and provided $21 billion in direct investments, catalyzing 114 billion in co-finance with a number of partners, some which I understand are engaging in this webinar. Number of projects were housed within the World Bank Group, and we work in close complementarity with other institutions of the financial mechanism under the Climate Convention, serving the Paris Declaration, namely the Green Climate Fund and the Adaptation Fund, which you may know well. Before being at the Jeff, I was at the Green Climate Fund, and we work very closely in a coordinated fashion across these funds. Next slide, please. What's the scale of funding? So the scale of funding, the Jeff operates in 4-year cycles. We're currently in Jeff 7. We're just about to wrap up Jeff 7, actually, and we're building towards the next 4-year cycle, starting in mid-2022. We're talking the main trust fund is has been historically just over $4 billion a cycle, so just over $1 billion US dollars a year. For the focal areas you see on the left-hand side, for the focus of what we're talking on now, especially climate change and biodiversity. It's governed by a council, of course, which involve governments, developing and developed countries. And we're advised by a private sector advisory group of high-level individuals and scientific and technical advisory panel. And we provide a suite of financing instruments. It has been historically primarily grants, and increasingly we're using loans, equities, guarantees, and other financing instruments in the blended finance manner. Next slide, please. There's a lot of detail, a lot of windows to access the Jeff, which I'm not going to go into detail on, but these are the top 3 related to biodiversity and climate action: the Main Trust Fund, Least Developed Countries Fund, and Special Climate Change Fund. And I'll be sharing some specific examples later through the Challenge Program for Adaptation and Innovation, and a specific opportunity that I'm very excited to share with you to partner with us. Next, please. I mentioned that Jeff is especially stepping up our support for blended finance, which we use when investment risks are too high to attract commercial finance to come to bear for adaptation and climate action. So we can blend the Jeff funds to reduce risk with commercial investors to crowd in private investment. This is an increasing area of work and catalyzing, of course, significant co-finance with partners, and something we could speak more about in more detail in the future, as Davide has suggested. Next slide, please. So that's the Jeff in a nutshell. I'd like to get into the substance now on nature-based solutions. Next slide, please. There's unprecedented momentum. This is a very exciting time for biodiversity action, for climate action. Unprecedented leadership, both public and private, realizing the potential and the opportunity for taking action to address our biodiversity and climate crises. For example, the Leaders' Pledge for Nature has recently been endorsed by heads of state and governments of 88 countries from all regions, and the president for the European Union, who represent over a third, 30% of global GDP and more than 2 billion people. They've pledged to decisive action to protect human and planetary health by reversing biodiversity loss by 2030. This has sent a strong message and a united signal that the world must step up ambition to halt and reverse nature loss to help tackle climate change and society's greatest challenges. And the timing has been very important of this. It comes ahead of the biodiversity and climate change conferences, which you may have heard are coming towards the end of this calendar year. At the same time, businesses, the private sector, are realizing the urgency and the importance. For example, Business for Nature, more than 700 companies with revenues of over 4.3 trillion US dollars have called governments to adopt policies now to reverse nature loss in this decade. These are a number of the logos of the partners supporting this group. You also may have heard of the task force for climate-related financial disclosures, as well as the equivalent on the nature side, emerging task force for nature financial disclosures, which is sending key market signals for the crucial importance of managing our risks, declaring and managing risks of climate and nature-related losses. Next slide, please. For some of us, this isn't new. There's the Beatles song, the long and winding road. There's been a long and winding road to this growing political momentum, building to what has been called the Year for Nature, with the biodiversity and climate conventions coming at the end of the year. Suffice it to say, this momentum has been growing over the past couple of decades, really. And finally, we're reaching a culminating point, which we hope can tip the scales for our planet before it's too late. Next slide, please. The term nature-based solutions, this is the definition provided by IUCN. There's a couple of key concepts in this definition. It's actions to use ecosystems, nature, that address societal challenges, climate change, supply chain resilience, jobs, human health, that effectively and adaptively simultaneously provide human well-being and biodiversity benefits simultaneously. This is an evolution in the, if you will, the environmental conservation community, addressing societal nature, addressing societal challenges. Next slide, please. The science is very strong and very clear behind this. This is a slide which shows us the direct correlation of nature-based solutions on the right-hand side to addressing climate hazards and their risks. Coastal storms, sea level rise, intense precipitation, drought, rising temperatures. You don't have to worry about the details. The key message is the science is rigorous behind the direct value and economic value of nature to addressing climate problems. On the mitigation, on the climate mitigation side, nature-based solutions provide up to 30%, well over a third of the emissions reductions needed by 2030 to keep global temperatures increased under 2 degrees Celsius. So a third of our solutions for climate change are right under our nose. It's called nature. If we would just invest in it intelligently at the scale that's needed. Next slide, please. This isn't just about science, it's also about economics. You may have heard of the Dasgupta review, the economics of biodiversity. This is has been launched by the UK government. This is in the lead up to the climate change conference of the parties at the end of this year, as well as the Convention on Biological Diversity conference of the parties at the end of this year. In the words of the Dasgupta review, nature is a blind spot in economics that we ignore and we continue to ignore at our peril. GDP, GNP does not effectively, it fails us in properly considering the value of nature in how we manage our economies and how we manage our businesses. It's businesses who embrace this fact, this economic and scientific fact, that will have the greatest chance of survival in the future and the greatest chance of prosperity in the future. The dependency of global GDP on nature is sometimes thought of as abstract, but what we really mean are livelihoods, jobs, people's ability to feed themselves, water security, agricultural productivity. Ecosystem services provide a critical portion of the total contribution to human welfare on the planet. Actually, it's estimated that the annual value of ecosystem services is generating an approximate value of $33 trillion a year. Ecosystem services being what nature provides us: fresh water, clean air, invasive species control. And the gap, the financial gap for nature and for climate adaptation is significant. The figures are startling. The State of Finance report for nature, recently produced by UNEP and the World Economic Forum, provides it indicates the gap is at 8.1 trillion US dollars will be required to maintain biodiversity and habitats vital to human civilization by 2050. That'll reaching an annual gap of 536 billion a year by 2050. That sounds pretty significant, especially when we consider the annual adaptation cost and gap ranging between 140 to 300 billion a year by 2030. That's from the UNEP Adaptation Gap Report. But actually, if we factor in the global GDP each year, just 1.3 by some studies, this is from the World Economic Forum and UNEP study, 1.3% of global GDP every year dedicated to restorative agriculture, forest, pollution management, protected areas, things like this will close the nature, is able to close the nature gap and continue civilization as we know it. Next slide, please. Where are these funds going to come from? So some of it will continue to come from public resources. Some of it will continue to come through funds like the Global Environment Facility. But let's be honest, that's a minority. We need to transform our financial system, our economic system, including and especially through private sector investment. What are the motivations for investing in nature? These are the top three. Businesses invest in nature and climate adaptation for their own resilience to nature loss, their own resilience to climate risks. They do it to finance others' resilience and green inclusive finance, microfinance, and to sell goods and services to others. And what does this produce? Resilient supply chains, human health, jobs, resilient infrastructure. Next slide, please. This is a study by the Nature Conservancy and the Paulson Institute of the opportunities for addressing this massive finance gap for nature that I mentioned earlier. And this has an equivalent to climate change adaptation. A huge amount is through reversing perverse subsidies and motivating private sector investments. A very small amount is through official development assistance in reality. But an important catalytic amount, and I'm going to get to that when we get to blended finance in a moment. I'd like to really highlight green financial products, and I think we can consider in here inclusive finance, and this is why the Jeff is so excited about the opportunity of green inclusive finance. Next slide, please. You know, there are a number of studies on what are the barriers to investment in nature and climate adaptation. These are some of them. I'm not going to dwell too much in the interest of time, but it's addressing these barriers that'll move us forwards to catalyze investment in nature and in climate adaptation. Next slide, please. Specific opportunities that we view, and this is courtesy of Earth Security, an analysis done just this year. Specific domains and instruments, financing instruments for addressing the climate adaptation and nature gaps. And we view microfinance, green inclusive finance as a key opportunity. Financing facilities as well, SME debt, corporate debt. Equity funds, of course, bonds, insurances, investment funds, payment for ecosystem services. On the right-hand side are some of the institutional levels, and this is especially where the Jeff invests, the policy and regulatory environments. And here we see, this is where we see TCFD, the Task Force for Financial Risk Disclosure for climate risks and as well as nature-based risks as a crucial piece. Next slide, please. So I'm going to share now, this is my last couple of slides. I'd like to share a couple of opportunities and specific concrete examples based on Jeff's support and some of our learning. Thank you. Next slide, please. Just this morning, it was announced. This is one specific project that I've had the opportunity to contribute to and to manage within the Jeff, the Landscape Resilience Fund, with just a modest investment from the Jeff in establishing the fund, together with our partner South Pole, which is a climate solutions and impact fund manager, together with the World Wildlife Fund, have launched the Climate Resilience Fund, which aims to mobilize $100 million in private investment by 2025 for climate adaptation projects and SMEs in developing and emerging economies that support agriculture, forest supply chains. And just this morning, it was announced that Chanel has committed $25 million to this fund over the next 6 years. So we're well on the way to the 100 million target. This is just one example. I think it was it 270 projects that Jeff has supported over the years. This is just one example of the type of catalytic work and blended investments that we can achieve together for addressing the biodiversity and climate crisis. Next slide, please. Specifically related to inclusive finance and microfinance, the CC Blend project with UNEP Environment and UNEP Environment Program and BFA, the Banco de Fomento Agropecuario in Central America. This bank is based in El Salvador. Which is blending finance for climate resilience in coffee and cacao value chains. The Jeff is providing some resources to help guarantee a line of credit provided by BFA, which is a microfinance provider, for local producers, for smallholder farmers and SMEs in Central America and El Salvador. We provide the guarantee, they provide the credit line. We're at about a 20-to-1 level, and the credit line with the agreement that it's at more accessible terms. We're aiming to get, as to get the rates much lower. We also provide support for technical assistance with smallholder farmers on specific NBS nature-based solution actions. BFA builds into their credit monitoring methodologies specific KPIs and to track biodiversity and climate adaptation impacts, which we need for our investments as the Jeff, of course, because that's our end goal. As well as we're establishing a high-level dialogue among development finance institutions, multilateral development banks, and MFIs to catalyze dedicated credit lines focused on dedicated to biodiversity and climate action. This is a specific project which is in the final. This is kind of hot off the press. It's in its final stages of approvals that we hope can be finalized and put into action very shortly. In a sense, this builds off the MIBA project, which I mentioned earlier, and which is now operating also in West Africa, and we hope it will continue to contribute to the movement, if you will, the global movement of inclusive finance and microfinance for biodiversity and climate action. Next slide, please. These were both supported through the Challenge Program for Adaptation Innovation, but there's many examples in other places in other areas of the Jeff support through our different trust funds for biodiversity and climate adaptation and mitigation. Next slide, please. Just a short announcement. We're very happy to be launching shortly a second call for concepts through this Challenge Program for Adaptation and Innovation, which I have the pleasure to manage, with the objective of catalyzing innovation and private sector investment in climate adaptation action with actors like many of yourselves. Something that's unique to this program, a little bit different from other windows to the Jeff, is any public or private sector proponent can directly submit their concept And at the end of the day, we would partner you with the Jeff Agency if the concept is approved. It's been very high. It was very highly competitive in the first round. We're looking forward to the next round, and I hope that I'm hopeful, cautiously optimistic, we'll be able to launch the call in some weeks time. I'd like to pause there. Merci beaucoup pour votre attention. Muchas gracias por su atención y listo para preguntas y para conversar. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Jason. We missed this fantastic picture at the end. That's very nice.
Thank you. Yes.
Leave a second to appreciate this nice piece of art. So how to use nature to offset the current societal and natural challenge.
This picture is courtesy of UNEP. Thank you.
Thanks, UNEP, for your art beyond your intervention. Okay, so first of all, thanks a lot for the great intervention. So thanks a lot for all the points you provided us. I think, first of all, you put in the context the green inclusive finance within the broader world of, of ecosystem conservation and broader world on non-only inclusive finance. So that I really think it allows us to make two kind of match from the micro to the broad finance and from the inclusive finance to the green. So I will first of all invite everyone that want to ask for a question, to post them in the chat or to post in the question and answer. And I'm gonna start reading the first question provided by Andre Oertel that is asking us billion of US dollar will be needed to be redirected toward climate protection investments. So this really the topic is, let's not recreate them, let's redirect them. I think is a key item also that you highlight. This requires incentives. So why people need to move from what have been invested so far. We know the financial world, want to have track change, want to have history. That was a good investment. You mentioned some of them, some of these incentives, but what are their concrete steps to integrate the cost of nature destruction as well as revenues of nature into the preservation in accounting companies? So I think there are two key questions here. Let me try to reinterpret. One is what are the incentives to change, to do what you have been doing so far, that even if it is not optimal, as I think now everyone starts recognizing it, but still is based on habits, and track record of history. So how do we move out of that? Typically for the financial world, I look from history. And the second one is, could be the improved accounting that really account about the cost and the revenue, that generate the nature can generate, so that we can integrate in our usual financial accounting the cost of destructing nature or the the return of investment into investing into nature. Please.
Thank you. Very insightful. Yeah. Motivations and incentives. And this is crucial in the coming months as we build to the Conference of the Parties, both for the Convention on Biological Diversity and the Convention on Climate Change, because this has the potential to put in place the incentives mechanisms that can drive both public and private finance at the scale that's needed, which is an achievable scale. It's achievable to address the financing gaps for climate adaptation, for climate mitigation, and for nature-based solutions. Some of these, for example, I mentioned the financial disclosures, disclosing companies, disclosing their risks and their opportunities for their physical assets based on climate impacts, and the equivalent for nature. This is right now a voluntary mechanism, TCFD, and then the nature equivalent, TNFD. If this would become more systematized across all sectors, really driven by rigorous accessible climate and nature information, then this has potential to transform credit rating methodologies, the cost of capital, and it can transform our financial system. This is just one example. Payments for ecosystem services. You know, we mentioned earlier, and the study by the Paulson Institute and the Nature Conservancy articulates that I think it's just about 40, I believe it's just under 50% of the financing gap can be addressed by getting rid of perverse incentives on nature destroying practices, stopping coal, stopping incentives for fossil fuels, and directing those towards a nature economy, an economy that recognizes our assets, the assets that we have in nature. Which brings to the second point, the valuing in financial terms what nature provides human beings for our economies, for our health, and for our well-being. This is often called natural capital, and ecosystem valuation. And strengthening these practices is an area that Jeff is very actively supporting. For example, we have an ongoing investment program with UNIDO in this areas. The more systematic use of natural capital accounting, ecosystem valuation as policy, as well as practice by governments, by companies, is also a real transformative opportunity for nature and the climate crisis.
Thank you. Thank you. I think then we have a follow-up question, I think, from Juan Vega, that I think is pointing out to the other challenge we encounter in this transition. One is finance. How do we redirect finance? And the other is, how do we educate? How do we generate capacity and awareness that this is possible? So the two sides, one is awareness, and one is how do we generate capacity once there is finance to implement, the solution we would like to implement. Here, Juan Vegas tells us how to educate millions of people in good environmental practices with a clear cost benefit and motivations. And I think while you answer to this question, I will also take the specification by Andrea Ortel that clearly was asking us, I think is related, how to move from financial accounting to economic accounting. There is a linkage between, okay, once you move finance, okay, then what do you finance? Yeah, so we will have capacity to implement what we are supposed to finance, and we will have awareness, of what is possible to be implemented.
On the awareness and the education piece, yeah, we need a sea change in awareness and understanding of the value of nature for driving solutions for human health, for the climate crisis, the linkage between biodiversity loss, nature loss, and infectious diseases. The cost of the current pandemic, driven by spread of zoonotic infectious diseases. We need a sea change in understanding. But I'm hopeful, actually. I was just reading this morning that there's a strong proposal for the UK, for example, to make mandatory, not optional, mandatory nature-based studies as part of A-levels, which will be included in A-level exams. Imagine, 20 years ago, biodiversity was a term that nobody knew. And now it may be required curriculum in the public education system of some countries. So I do have hope, but we don't have time to play around. It needs to happen systematically and urgently.
Thank you. I follow up with another question from Tees Merton that is asking us about climate change is causing an increase in investment necessary for water. So it's focused on water conservation and safe water supply. Meanwhile, water plays an integral role in both climate change adaptation and mitigation. Using this fact as a point of departure, how can we mobilize investment for water conservation and safe water supply? So how water, that of course is key, also considering how much is composing our body, as part of nature, how can we take that as a leverage starting point in terms of using nature to adapt and to promote ecosystems?
Davide, could I suggest, do you want to take a few comments and then answer at least a couple?
If you want, I can take more than one. This is one, yeah, is about, you got it. And the other one is about, I can take Govida out, that is asking about from Nepal. I think climate literature is the first step, yeah, that need to be provided to low income people. And this, I think, is a key point touching, the outreach. Who do we want to reach with this adaptation? Yeah, who is more difficult to reach? Yeah, so climate literature is something that, as you make example in UK, can become mandatory. But how that will become mandatory for people that typically are in the countryside, in developing country, maybe not even have access to education. So how do we get climate literacy to this population that is the one will be more affected by climate change? And Govida is asking about my query about new nuance of the GEF is that announcement qualified to non-accredited private sector financial services provider. Yeah, please take these two to start with.
Okay, I'm going to start with the second one on strengthening or supporting local producers, local smallholder farmers, local actors with the expertise, as well as the access to capital that's urgently needed to transform to more climate resilient and nature friendly practices. This is one of the reasons I see microfinance as such a key strategy, because of course microfinance institutions often reach where even the state doesn't, in many cases. The reach of the lending agents of microfinance institutions into small local context in local languages and culturally appropriate, culturally relevant practices and understandings is crucial. And that's why in the experience I was sharing on the support for microfinance in Central America, we found it so important to have a strong, what we've called technical assistance aspect. But basically this means the ability of individuals, the agents of the outreach agents of the microfinance institutions, and arming them with their tablets and videos and local languages and materials, hard copy materials, to be able to talk about the suite of options that they have to use nature-based solutions and how to get accessible at fair rates credit to take action on them. So coupling the technical assistance with the finances is key, and the reach of the microfinance sector to reach to some of the most isolated and vulnerable populations is crucial. On the point of water conservation, how we can mobilize different the scale of financing that's needed. Well, this is where I think we have to be creative and we have to be innovative, and some of the innovative financing instruments that I referred to earlier, and that's a short list. There's people on the call will be much more familiar with others, but this is the direction we need to go. Evolution of insurance products, for example, and water funds, for example, and payment for ecosystem services. And on the specific question of this challenge program, which we're gearing up for a second round for, yes, any actor, it can't be an individual, any institution can submit a concept directly to the GEF Secretariat. And it's a simple concept. It was 3 pages in the first round. I think we might up it to 4 to have a little bit more information, but very accessible. And whether it can be a GEF agency accredited to the GEF, but it doesn't have to be. At the end of the day, our business model is that funds have to go through one of our 18 GEF agencies. But if we have a concept we like, we will help partner with you, which is what happened. I shared the example of the case of South Pole and WWF. The concept came to us directly from South Pole, and we partnered them with WWF. WWF was delighted and added value to the project, and we just had that great announcement of Chanel stepping up to be the anchor investor just this morning.
Thank you. I will take another question from Jurai Uiadzi. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, that I think is pointing out from his experience from Uganda, from Africa, the fact that, okay, it's clear that we need to scale up investment for biodiversity and climate, but how effective this will be invested. So, you know, how can we verify that that is invested in a way in which will then generate the outcomes that has been aimed to? You know, the implementers must have cut-edge expertise, a good field presence, and make real change. Yeah. So sometimes you see various projects sort of pretending to be green when they actually are not making much difference. So except to have a label. So question is, what will make in an efficient way? Because of course you can go and visit everyone and check every 2 minutes what is happening. Maybe it's not so efficient. In an efficient way, the capacity to trust, to generate trust that the money that go for biodiversity conservation and climate change adaptation are actually generating the nice return on investment or the nice reduction in cost that you are telling us. That I think is a key item.
This is a key. No, this is a key point. I've got excited about this one. This is because this gets to the core, and I think maybe part of the core role, if I could suggest that, of e-MFP, a big part of what you're doing. 3 words: key performance indicators. This is so crucial because if for example, the Jeff to invest, we're investing in climate and biodiversity results. That's what we care about. The vehicle can be microfinance or green inclusive finance or an equity fund or an insurance product. We care about those goals. And so systematically using intelligently, strategically developed key performance indicators for biodiversity results, for climate resilience and adaptation results is crucial. And you know, we've seen some really transformative work, for example, by PNB Paribas, of building these, just as an example, together with the support of YAPU, by the way, building in these key performance indicators into their lines of credit. So who they lend to needs to report on these key performance indicators. Yes, the financial bottom line, and also the biodiversity and climate adaptation and mitigation bottom lines. And that's why this development of these the indicators framework, which you referenced at the beginning of this call, Davide, is so I would say potentially transformative, because if we can build this into lending practices and ultimately into credit rating practices, we're transforming the financial system in a way that we crucially need to align nature with our financial system.
Thank you. I will take a question from Sonia Petersi that I think she is basically, we could build on that, and is basically mixing, you know, the use of technology. So climate smart advisory services using digital solution could help raise awareness among farmers and changing farmers' practices. She tells us that in 2019, 57 mobile network operators disclosed their climate impact. Is there a dialogue ongoing with mobile industry, or what will be the role of digital technology in your opinion? So how we know that you know, mobile payment, mobile is diffusing immensely. Yeah, is there any way to leverage that network to better understand what are the climatic risks and possible, you know, option to adapt, basically by using already this kind of network that is existing?
Yeah, this is a real new. This is another opportunity area. Clearly, innovative technologies, information technologies, the fact that we can, you know, climate information can flow to local producers instantaneously. You know, I think we're all aware of the development of apps, for example, on smartphones, which is providing otherwise until recently, very hard to get critical information driving more climate resilient practices, when to plant, what to plant, market prices, transfer of funds, you know, whole transformational opportunity, as well as the production and use of climate information. Another project supported by the Challenge Program for Adaptation Innovation, for example, is the use of drones in Colombia to real-time provide information for investment decision-making on the impacts of different climate hazards in very rural areas. This is together with MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and the Colombian government, and municipal governments in Colombia. It's a pilot project, but you know, it's just one example of what's possible through technological innovation, which we're really happy to be supporting and helping go mainstream.
Thanks a lot. So I think we are reaching the end, unfortunately, of this exciting presentation. I'm happy to communicate. We've been listening here for this 1 hour for around 100 people, actually 95 ongoing. Now we are going below 90 for the sake of time. So that means that, again, that is the 15 or 16 event we have. So the interest is very high. So I would like to ask 2 questions to close before making the closure. One very clear from a participant that is telling us, can you please provide when will be communicated, I imagine, the deadline for the concept note? People want to apply and content information to submit the concept note. So that will be key. I imagine it's not out yet. When it will be out, we can even use our network to send to every participant. Yeah, so that's, you will have communicated that. And my question is also, I will also have a quick question to say, okay, we want to match private and public funds, as you said, is needed. Yeah. What are the key incentives for one another to match? Yeah, so one need the other. Typically, we have 2 dictionary, you know, to look at the same problem. Is there an ongoing cooperation from GEF to private investor, or how private investor can get engaged with GEF, or GEF get engaged with private investor, because there's a double interest, of course. So to leverage the 2 different strategies to invest, so to actually reach the MFIs, financial institution, that then can channel this fund effectively to smallholders.
Okay, I'll take those in order. The first question, it's what you said, Davide. This second call for concepts isn't out yet. To be honest, I was hoping to be able to announce it on this call, but it's not quite ready. I can't give you an absolute date, unfortunately, but I hope it'll be a matter of weeks. And Davide, maybe we can partner where you can transmit it when it is, the link through the e-MFP platform. The first round was highly competitive. We received more than we anticipated. I hope we'll be able to support it in the financial scale deserving. We'll do our best. We see a lot of potential and a lot of innovative ideas coming to the Jeff and being supported through this program. So it's very exciting. What are the motivations, or how we, you know, what does the public and the private sector get from blending their finance for climate and biodiversity action? I think it's pretty straightforward. What the private sector gets is risk sharing. So the Jeff, for example, but also others, the Green Climate Fund and other sources of climate and biodiversity finance can share the risk. Can provide concessional resources to share the risk when the investment isn't quite when the risk is too great for private commercial capital on its own. When it is, then we can share the risk. Why? What's our interest? What's public finance and including multilateral interest? Well, we want impact, and when I mean impact, we want biodiversity impact. Impact on ecosystem health, and we want climate adaptation, resilience impact, mitigation impact, CO2 emissions. That's what we're investing in. And we have you know, this is a symbiotic interests here. So this is, you know, we can call this blended finance. It's an area of increased Jeff focus. Davide, we've spoken about perhaps having this be a topic in the future. It's like the program in the Jeff that this is managed by is called the non-grant instrument. It's managed by a colleague whose name is Avril Benchimol, who also engages in e-MFP, and maybe this could be a topic for the future to go deeper into.
Thanks a lot. So we are quite over time, but the topic is so urgent and so exciting that I think was worth to to spend a bit of more time. First of all, I would like to thank all the people that participated, that find this topic so interesting for their knowledge, for their business, and for their daily life. Here we have a mission to accomplish. Time is running out. What is nice is that capacity and focus is increasing. So hopefully we will be able to manage by joining forces with our different attitude and capacities. So thanks to you to participate. Thanks to you to engage in taking action and thinking how to, to use the information received to include in your daily work and planning. Thanks a lot for Jason. Yeah, it's been of great inspiration to listening to you. I also think that it's so important the work that GEF is doing to promote this other side of green that many times has been just focused on, financing clean energy and stuff, but instead having a transformative attitude in how we implement our business, how we think about generating resiliencies and promoting solution. Yeah, that is key, the work you're doing there. So we hope to have the possibility to cooperate more into that. For all the people that listen, again, please, if you found that interesting and you were not aware yet, and if you find you have a nice stories to tell us about green inclusive finance, you see here below the contact of Joanna from the e-MFP, European Microfinance Platform, my contact, Davide, here below, and the contact of Natalia, co-head of the action group together with me. So please feel free to write us if you want to propose a topic to present the webinar series. If you find the action, as explained at the beginning, interesting for you, what we do here in the Green, Inclusive and Climate Smart Finance Action Group, and you think you are interested to join, again, please feel free to drop an email. We'll be happy to discuss with you. We are inclusive in all sense, not only doing inclusive finance, we try to include as much as possible people that can bring solutions. Voila, so to close, I would like to tell you that the video is being recorded. So if you want to review it or you want to share with your colleagues, we will send you the link. And as soon as the new website of the Green Inclusive and Climate Smart Finance Action Group will be live, you will also find there. And so you can keep on finding it there, as well as the slides of the presentation will be sent to all participants so that you can share internally into your company. You can please feel free to diffuse to anyone you believe is interested to. And also this one will be posted on our new website. Again, thanks a lot for being with us. Thanks a lot for your engagement for nature. And we hope to see you very soon.